Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to this very first flipped class from Mr. Huggins. Uh, Today we are going to cover the first part of the dialogue called the Gorgias by Plato. And just for some advice, what you should be doing is while I am reading this, you should be reading the dialogue yourself. I will be pausing in the middle of the dialogue. Well, okay, I won't be pausing. I will be essentially interrupting myself to add some notes as far as what some of the phrases mean. I would think the best thing you can do is read along with the dialogue and make notes yourself. And hey, good for you. You get to pause this whenever you want to, make your notes, and then come back to it. So the most important thing is when you get to something that you think, holy crud, this does not make sense. What you need to be doing, I'm not recording, am I? I am recording. Okay. So you get to stop this and then pause and say, I don't understand. Write the question down and bring it to class when we meet to discuss it tomorrow. And it may happen that after you write down a question, you'll go back to the stream, and he'll go, "Oh, Huggins just answered that question," or even better, Socrates and the rest of them just answered that question. And if so, then great. Write down the answer, cross off that question, and you'll be ready for a better question. So I expect everybody to come to class with a bunch of questions, and I want to hear from everybody. So here we go. All right. Now I will be playing all parts of this dialogue. I will be playing Socrates, Callicles, Chaerephon, Gorgias, of course, and Polus. So the persons of the dialogue are Callicles. Callicles is a very opinionated man, and he is the host of the gathering. Back at this time period, it was considered part of entertainment to hire speakers or performers to come to your home and give an exhibition. Of course, there weren't any televisions, there weren't any radios, there weren't any recordings, so all entertainment was live all the time. And in this particular case, what we have is Gorgias, the rhetorician or performer. He is coming to Callicles' house to perform his job, which is speech making. And he's got his assistant, Polus, who is his apprentice or student, who is there as well. And finally, we've got Chaerephon, who really is hardly in the dialogue at all. He's just a guest, who has brought Socrates, the philosopher, as another guest. So I will be performing all 5 of these parts, and hopefully it will be at least as entertaining as reading it off the page. Okay, so here we go. We are at the house of Callicles. What is the matter, Callicles? What? Yeah, blasted. Try that again. What is the matter, Chaerephon? Does Socrates want to hear Gorgias? Yes, that's why we came. Please come in. Gorgias is staying with me, and he will be glad to perform for you. Ah, very good, Callicles, but will he answer our questions? You see, I want him to explain what he really does and what he professes and teaches. He may defer the performance to some other time. Well, there is nothing like asking him, Socrates, and indeed to answer questions as part of his performance. He was saying only just now that anyone in my house might put any question to him, and that he would answer. How fortunate! Will you ask him, Chaerephon? What shall I ask him? Ask him who he is. What do you mean? I mean, ask him the kind of question that would make him tell us that he was a cobbler if he were a maker of shoes. Do you understand? Ah, I understand. I will ask him. Tell me, Gorgias, is our friend Callicles right in saying that you will answer any question which you are asked? Quite right, Chaerephon, and I was just saying so, and I may add that many years have elapsed since anyone has asked me a new one. Well, you must be good at it, Gorgias. Chaerephon, you will have to be the judge of that. Yes, indeed, and if you like, Chaerephon, you may ask me too, for I think that Gorgias, who has been talking a long time, is tired. And do you, Polus, think that you can answer better than Gorgias? If I answer well enough for you, what does it matter? Not at all, and you shall answer if you like. Ask. My question is this. If Gorgias had the skill of his brother Herodicus, what would he be? A physician? Yes. And if he had the skill of Aristophon, the son of Asiglaiophon, or as of his brother Polygnotus, what would he be? Clearly a painter. But now what shall we call him? What is the profession in which he is skilled? Chaerephon, men practice many professions, and they become skilled in them through experience. Experience allows a man to direct his own life, but inexperience makes a man to have to rely on luck. And different persons in different ways are skilled in different professions, and the best persons practice the best professions. And our friend Gorgias is one of the best, and the profession he practices is the noblest. Polus has been taught how to make an excellent speech, Gorgias, but he is not fulfilling the promise which he made to Chaerephon. What do you mean, Socrates? I mean that he has not exactly answered the question which he was asked. Then why not ask him yourself? But I would rather ask you, Gorgias, if you are disposed to answer, for I see from the few words which Polus has uttered that he has attended more to the profession called rhetoric than he has to making a skilled argument. Now, just to break in, Mr. Huggins, speaking as Mr. Huggins, rhetoric is a word that we don't use very often, except in the phrase rhetorical question. And a rhetorical question is a question you ask to make a point. In other words, it's a speaking tool. A rhetorician is a maker of speeches. So, what makes you say so, Socrates? Because, Polus, when Chaerephon asked you what was Gorgias's profession, you praised it as if you were answering someone who found fault with it. But you never said what that profession was. What? Did I not say that it was the noblest of professions? Then yes, indeed, but that was no answer to the question. Nobody asked how good it was, but what was the nature of his profession, what we were to call Gorgias. And I would still beg you briefly and clearly, as you answered Chaerephon when he asked you at first, to say what this profession is, and what we ought to call Gorgias. Or rather, Gorgias, let me turn to you and ask the same question. What are we to call you, and what is your profession? Rhetoric, Socrates, is my profession. Then I am to call you a rhetorician. And we are to say that you can make other men rhetoricians? Yes, that is exactly what I claim to make them, not only at Athens, but at all places. And may we continue to ask you questions, Gorgias, as we are doing now, and let Polus make speeches later? Will you keep your promise and give us short answers to the questions we ask? Well, some answers have to be longer than others, Socrates, but I will do my best to make them as short as possible, for that is part of being a skilled rhetorician. That is what we want, Gorgias, the short method now, and the longer one at some other time. You're very good, and you will certainly say that you never heard a man use fewer words. Well, since you claim to be a rhetorician and the maker of rhetoricians, let me ask you, with what is rhetoric concerned? If I asked what is weaving concerned with, you would say, would you not, it was with the making of garments? Yes. And music is with the making of melodies? It is. So answer me in like manner about rhetoric. With what is rhetoric concerned? With speech. What sort of speech, Gorgias? The kind of speaking that would teach sick people how to get well? No. then rhetoric isn't about all kinds of speech. Certainly not. But rhetoric makes men able to speak. Yes. And to understand what they speak about. Yes, of course. But doesn't the profession of medicine, which we just mentioned, also teach men to understand and speak about the sick? Certainly. Then medicine has to do with speech. Yes. Speech about diseases? Just so. And people who run gyms also speak about the good or evil condition of the body. Very true. And the same, Gorgias, is true of the other professions. All of them can speak about their specialties. Clearly. Then if you call rhetoric the profession of speech, and all the other professions teach people to speak about them, why don't you call them professions of rhetoric? Because, Socrates, the other professions only teach speaking so that they can do something else. For example, they might work with their hands, but in rhetoric there is only the speech. And therefore I am justified in saying that rhetoric treats of speech. I'm not sure whether I entirely understand you, but I'm sure I will soon be able to. Please answer me a question. You agree that professions exist? Yes. And in most professions, the people who practice them do things and don't really need to speak. Painting, carving, many other professions can be done silently. I suppose you would say they have nothing to do with rhetoric. Exactly, Socrates. But there are other professions which have a lot to do with language and require either no action or very little. For example, the profession of mathematics, accounting, and even of playing chess. In some of these, speech and action happen together, but in most of them, the verbal element is greater. They depend on words to make them effective. And I think you mean that rhetoric is a profession similar to these? Exactly. Well then, seeing that rhetoric is one of those professions that uses words, and there are other professions that also use words, then what is special about the words used in rhetoric? I mean, a person might ask me, Socrates, what is mathematics? And I should reply to him that arithmetic is a profession that uses words. And then he would ask, words about what? And I'd say, words about numbers and how to use them. And if he asked again, what is the art of accounting? I should say, that also is a profession that uses words. And if he again said, words about what? I should say, well, just like arithmetic, except accountants use math to keep track of money. And I could also say that astronomy uses words to tell us about the motions of the stars and sun and moon. You would be quite right, Socrates. Then, Gorgias, tell us the truth about rhetoric. You said it's a profession that works by using words. True. Words which do what? To what do the words which rhetoric uses relate? To the greatest, Socrates, and the best of human things. That again, Gorgias, is ambiguous. I am still in the dark, for which are the greatest and best of human things? I mean, at feasts we sing the old drinking song about the goods of life. First health, next beauty, thirdly wealth. Yes, I know the song, but where are you going with this? Well, the people who produce all those things, the physician, the trainer, and the businessman, will all show up. First, the physicians will say, oh, Socrates, Gorgias is deceiving you, for my profession is concerned with the greatest good of men, and not his. What do you mean, I shall say? Do you mean that your profession produces the greatest good? Certainly, he will answer, for is not health the greatest good? What greater good can man have, Socrates? And then after him, the trainer will come and say, I too, Socrates, shall be greatly surprised if Gorgias can show more good of his profession than I can show of mine. To him again, I shall say, what is your business? I am a trainer, he will reply, and my business is to make men beautiful and strong in body. And I have done with the trainer. There arrives the businessman, and he, as I expect, will utterly despise them all. Consider, Socrates, he will say, whether Gorgias or anyone else can produce any greater good than wealth. Well, you and I say to him, you're a creator of wealth? Yes, he replies. And do you consider wealth to be the... Yes, he replies. And do you consider wealth to be the greatest good of men? Of course, will be his reply. And we shall rejoin, yes, but our friend Gorgias contends that he produces a greater good than yours. And then he will be sure to go on and ask, what good? And now I want you, Gorgias, to imagine that we are all asking this question. What is that which, as you say, is the greatest good of man, and of which you are the creator? That which is truly the greatest good of all, the good which gives men freedom in their own persons, and to individuals the power of ruling over others in their governments. And what is that?
What is there greater than the word which persuades the judges in the courts, or the senators in the council, or the citizens in the assembly, or at any other political meeting? If you can persuade them, you will have the physician your slave, and the trainer your slave, and the businessman of whom you talk will make money, not for himself, but for you who can persuade speak and persuade the multitude.
Now, I think, Gorgias, you have very accurately explained the profession of rhetoric. That rhetoric creates persuasion and nothing else. Do you know any other effective rhetoric over and above that of producing persuasion?
No, the definition seems to be very fair, Socrates, for persuasion is the chief end of rhetoric.
Well, is rhetoric the only profession that persuades? Or do other professions have the same effect? I mean to say, does a person who teaches anything persuade men of that which he teaches, or not?
He persuades, Socrates. There can be no mistake about that.
So, if we take the professions of which we are just now speaking, then math and mathematicians teach us the property of numbers.
Certainly.
And therefore persuade us of them.
Yes.
Then math, like rhetoric, creates persuasion.
Clearly.
Then rhetoric is not the only creator of persuasion.
True.
Well, if rhetoric isn't the only profession that works by persuasion, then what kind of persuasion does rhetoric create?
I would say that the rhetoric is the profession of persuasion in courts of law and other assemblies, as I was just now saying, and about the just and the unjust.
That's about what I thought you would say. I want to make sure we are understanding each other. Let me ask another question. Is there such a thing as learning?
Yes.
And there is also believing.
Yes.
And are learning and belief the same things?
In my judgment, Socrates, they are not the same.
And your judgment is right, which we can demonstrate like this. If a person were to say to you, "Is there, Gorgias, a false belief as well as true?" you would say that there is, yes?
Yes.
Well, but is there a false knowledge as well as a true?
No.
No, which proves that knowledge and belief are different things.
Very true.
And yet those who have learned as well as those who have believed are persuaded?
Just so.
So we're really talking about two kinds of persuasion. One that gives only belief, and the other that gives belief without knowledge.
Yes.
Clearly. And which kind of persuasion does rhetoric create in the courts of law and other assemblies about justice? The persuasion which gives belief without knowledge, or the persuasion that gives knowledge?
Clearly, Socrates, that which only gives belief.
Then rhetoric creates belief about the just and unjust without teaching us about them.
True.
And the rhetorician does not teach the courts of law or other assemblies, but he creates belief about them, for no one can teach so many people about such difficult things in such a short time.
Certainly not.
Okay, let's review what we know about rhetoric. When the assembly meets to elect a physician or a shipwright or any other craftsman, will they ask the rhetorician what he thinks? Surely not. The nation needs to choose the person who is most skilled. When walls have to be built, or harbors, or docks constructed, we want the master workman to advise, not the rhetorician. Or when generals have to be chosen and the army set in order, or a battle won, then the military should advise, and not the rhetoricians. What do you think, Gorgias? Since you claim to be a rhetorician and a maker of rhetoricians, you must be the best person to ask. And your own students probably want to know too. What would you say to them if they ask, "What will you teach us so that we can advise the nation? Only about justice or about those other things which Socrates has just mentioned?" How will you answer them?
A good question, Socrates, and I will endeavor to explain to you the whole nature of rhetoric. You must have heard, I think, that Themistocles and Pericles planned the docks and the walls of the Athenians, and not the buildings. Such is the tradition, Gorgias, about Themistocles, and I myself heard the speech of Pericles about the middle wall. And you will observe, Socrates, that when a decision has to be given in such matters, the rhetoricians are the advisers. They are the men who win their point. I was considering that, Gorgias, when I asked what the nature of rhetoric was. Socrates, if you only knew how rhetoric dominates all the inferior professions. Let me offer you a striking example of this. On several occasions, I have been with my brother Herodicus or some other physicians to see one of his patients who would not allow the physician to give him medicine or apply the knife or hot iron to him. And I have persuaded him to do for me what he would not do for the physician, just by the use of rhetoric. I'm going to break in here, Mr. Huggins, pausing the dialogue. Going to the doctor in the ancient world and really any time before the 19th century was especially no fun because anesthetics are a really modern invention. You know, the whole idea of, hey, you're having surgery, let's put you to sleep. Yeah, that didn't happen before the 1800s. Any other time people needed to do major surgery, it was like, strap down because this is gonna suck. Basically, the surgeon wielded the knife as fast as he could, and the patient just had to scream until it was over. So it's not really surprising that there were times when Gorgias's brother is like, it's time for surgery, and the patient's like, don't touch me, I'll kill you. And medicines tended to be violent too. I mean, these people didn't have a lot of understanding of modern scientific techniques. So, a lot of the time it's like, you got a stomach upset? Here, take this, it'll make you have diarrhea. Take this, it'll make you throw up. And when you're done with that, hopefully that'll sort of reset your digestive system. Yes, basically the medicine of the whole philosophy of medicine before the modern era was, have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? Yeah. So that's what physicians did, and it really sucked when you basically had to try to hit the reset button on your digestive system. So it was horrible, and this is why maybe you actually need a professional persuader to okay, tell the guy we got to strap him down and cut the cancer out, or it's most definitely going to kill him. So there you have it. Okay, so moving right along. Yeah. And I say that if a rhetorician and a physician were to go to any city and had to argue before their government as to which of them should be elected state physician, the physician would have no chance. He who could speak would be chosen if he wished. And in a contest with a man of any other profession, the rhetorician more than anyone would have the power of getting himself chosen, for he can speak more persuasively to the people than any of them, and on any subject. Such is the nature and power of the profession of rhetoric. And yet, Socrates, the rhetorician ought not to abuse his strength any more than a fighter or swordsman, because he has powers which are more than a match for either friend or enemy. He ought not therefore to strike, stab, or slay his friends. And suppose a man has been trained to be a skillful fighter. If he uses his training to beat his father or mother or any one of his families or familiars or friends, well, that is no reason why his trainers should be despised or banished from the city. For they taught their skills for a good purpose, to be used against enemies and evildoers, in self-defense, not in aggression. And others have perverted their instructions and turned to a bad use their own strength and skill. But that doesn't mean that teachers are bad, nor is the profession bad in itself. Those who make a bad use of the art are to blame. And it is the same with rhetoric, for the rhetorician can speak against all men and upon any subject. He can persuade the people of anything which he pleases, but he should not therefore try to cheat the physician or anyone else merely because he has power. He ought to use rhetoric fairly, as he would also use his athletic powers. And if after having become a rhetorician he makes a bad use of his strength and skill, his instructor surely ought not on that account to be despised or banished, for he was intended by his teacher to make a good use of his instructions, but he abuses them. And therefore he is the person who ought to be despised, banished, and put to death, and not his instructor.
Gorgias, something surprises me in your words, though you may be right and I may have misunderstood you. You say that you can make any man who wants to learn a rhetorician?
Yes.
You mean that you will teach him to persuade people on any subject? Not by instruction, but by persuasion?
Quite so.
You are saying, in fact, that the rhetorician will have greater powers of persuasion than the physician, even in a matter of health?
Yes. With the common people, that is.
Ah, you mean with ignorant people? Because he wouldn't be able to persuade other physicians.
Very true.
But if he has more power of persuasion than the physician, he has greater power.
Certainly.
Then, when the rhetorician is more persuasive than the physician, the ignorant is more persuasive with the ignorant than the educated man is? Isn't that the inference?
In this case, yes.
And it would work the same way for any profession. The rhetorician doesn't need to know the truth about things. He has only to discover some way of persuading the ignorant that he knows more than those who actually know.
Yes, Socrates. And isn't that awesome? You don't have to learn any other profession, only rhetoric, and yet you will be in no way inferior to any of them.
We can discuss that later, but I would rather begin by asking another question. Does a rhetorician really know anything of what is good and evil, honorable or dishonorable, and just or unjust? Or is he only persuading the ignorant that he knows more than actual experts? Does your pupil know these things before he can come to you and be taught professional rhetoric? If he is ignorant, it is not your business to teach him, but you will make him seem to know them when he doesn't. You will make him seem to be a good man to the people when he is not. Or will you be unable to teach him rhetoric at all unless he knows about justice first? So which is it? Is this the power of rhetoric?
Well, Socrates, I suppose that if the pupil does not know justice, he will have to learn it from me as well.
Exactly. Whoever you make a rhetorician must either know the nature of the just and unjust already, or he must be taught by you.
Certainly.
Now, is someone who has learned carpentering a carpenter?
Yes.
And a person who has learned music is a musician?
Yes.
And someone who has learned medicine is a physician, right? A person who has learned anything is that which his knowledge makes him.
Certainly.
And so he who has learned what is just.
To be sure.
And he who does what is just is just.
Yes.
And won't the just man always desire to do what is just?
That makes sense.
So the just man will never consent to do injustice?
Certainly not.
And we have concluded that the rhetorician must be a just man?
Yes.
So he will never be willing to do injustice?
Clearly not.
But didn't you say just now that if the rhetorician makes a bad and unjust use of his rhetoric, his teacher cannot be blamed, but only the wrongdoer himself is to be banished? Didn't you just say that?
Yes, I did.
But now we are saying that this rhetorician will never have done injustice at all, because he is, after all, a just man. True. And at the beginning of this discussion, Gorgias, we said that rhetoric was speech about justice and injustice, didn't we?
Yes.
So I thought at the beginning that rhetoric could never be unjust, because you said it was always speaking about justice. But when you added that the rhetorician might make a bad use of rhetoric, I was surprised at your inconsistency. And as we have continued our discussion, we have seen that the rhetorician must be incapable of making an unjust use of rhetoric or of doing injustice. I don't think we've gotten to the truth of this yet. Socrates, are you even serious? Of course Gorgias is going to say that a rhetorician knows the just and the honorable and the good. And when you asked him, he admitted that he could teach anyone about them. Now you think you have spotted a contradiction. But would anyone ever admit that he does not know or cannot teach what justice is? The truth is that you are just being insulting. Polus! The reason we have friends and children is that when we get old and stumble, a younger generation may correct us. And now, if Gorgias and I are stumbling, here are you who should raise us up, and I will certainly admit any error into which you think that I may have fallen upon one condition. What condition?